Today in New York, Hyundai pulled the covers off of the refreshed 2025 Santa Cruz. It's received a decent number of changes for 2025, including a bolder front-end look, but the one thing that it doesn't get for 2025 is the one thing that a lot of folks had been asking for: a hybrid system under the hood. There isn't one, and there isn't a plug-in hybrid either, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's talk about the exterior design. This is the new XRT trim. We get some really massive recovery hooks up front, which I find very surprising, especially in an era where a lot of car companies and a lot of people are interested in pedestrian crash ratings. These are really going to be handy, though, for someone that does want to take their Santa Cruz further off the beaten path. The grille design, it's somewhat familiar, but it has really been squared off with these much boxier elements and these boxier LED designs right here. Of course, the headlights are still separate and they're down there lower. It certainly looks like the Tucson, and the Santa Cruz is of course Tucson based, but it's not a direct Santa Cruz front end just bolted onto the pickup truck. Moving around to the side, we get, again, big wheel arches here like we found before. New wheels, of course, in the XRT trim. These are sort of an homage to beadlock capable wheels, I guess you could say, with their design there, but obviously they're not going to be beadlock capable. We do have some all-terrain tires. They're not the most aggressive all-terrain tire available, but we do have them there. And then, of course, coming around to the back, we still have the small truck bed behind. Now, the bed in the Santa Cruz is a little bit smaller than the one in the Maverick. That's continually been a complaint from some folks out there, but it has a feature the Maverick doesn't have. Very much like the Honda Ridgeline, it has a teeny tiny trunk inside the bed. That's kind of a cool feature if you want to keep stuff a little bit more watertight or a little bit out the sight of prying eyes. We also get a roller style cargo cover on top, kind of a la Rivian, although manual, not powered. It does take up a bit of room on the inside of the cargo area, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Just check out that. If you're debating about whether to get this option or not, keep in mind it occupies about the size of, I don't know, a small bag of golf clubs or something like that right up there at the top of the bed. But coming around to the rear, you'll notice that the taillight design, pretty similar to the outgoing Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz still embossed right there, nice and big on the hatch. We still have well-integrated steps over there on each side. And it is rated to tow up to 5,000 pounds when properly equipped, but you're going to need to get the optional 2.5-liter turbo in order to get that increased towing capacity. And that brings us under the hood. We get the same base engine that we find in the Hyundai Tucson, a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder naturally aspirated engine mated to an 8-speed traditional automatic transmission, or this optional turbo that's not available in the Tucson, but I kind of wish it was. Obviously, more power out of the 2.5-liter turbo, a lot more torque, but you get an 8-speed wet dual-clutch transmission. Not everybody has been a big fan of that wet DCT under the hood, but I think it shifts just fine. If you plan on doing more rugged off-roading or more towing, though, you might want to stick with the regular 8-speed automatic transmission, because there's certainly going to be pros and cons off-road. If you want to know more about that, you can check out our Santa Fe XRT video, where I did take that new model out off-road with basically the same DCT, and you can see some of the pros and cons of that system. Now let's take a look at the inside, because the interior is definitely a big change for 2025. In here we find many of the same changes that we find in the Tucson for 2025. The bulk of the dashboard is shared between the two models, so that makes quite a bit of sense. Hyundai wanted the interior to look a little bit more rugged and a little bit less car-like, and I think they've definitely achieved that with the refresh. Obviously, they also wanted to make it definitely more tech-focused, so we get the big twin-screen LCD setup in the dashboard that we've seen in other Hyundai models, and we get more premium materials here and there as well, with a soft-touch upper section of the dashboard right there, and a new steering wheel design, with some of the themes borrowed from the Hyundai Ioniq line, like the 4 dots right there on the steering wheel that's meant to spell out the letter H in Morse code. We get the new steering wheel with the 3-spoke design there, sport grips up top, 2-zone automatic climate control there. We have a regular console shifter right down there, 2 cup holders, lots of storage going on here, and this screen now offers wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. Yes, with the big screen format, which is a nice touch. Over here on this side, we have a large storage area over here for the passenger, and then we have a big bin-style glove compartment lower than that. The doors still have kind of a passenger car vibe to the swooshes coming up the side, but I think they did a good job integrating that with this new squarer and a little bit more linear dashboard style. As before, one important thing to keep in mind with a vehicle like this or the Maverick is that you aren't going to find quite as much room as you'd find in the average compact crossover because of that pickup truck bed behind. So if I adjust this front seat for me at 6 feet tall to a position where I think I'd be pretty comfortable for a longer road trip, let's see what kind of room we have behind. And back here, you'll notice that we find actually a little bit less legroom than you'd get in the corresponding Tucson. And that's simply because they had to move the rear seats forward a little bit to give us a usable bed behind without making this feel too big, I guess you'd say. Still have cup holders over here on the doors. That's not my favorite location, but we have a reasonable amount of room. If I scoot over here to the middle seat, plenty of headroom, actually a little bit more headroom than we find in something like the new Ford Ranger, and honestly about the same kind of interior room in the second row as we'd find in a Ford Ranger. The big difference, of course, is going to be the bed in the back, where we find notably less bed space than you'd find in something like the Tacoma or that Ranger. Now, unfortunately, the one thing we don't know yet with the new Santa Cruz is its price tag. Expect it to stick pretty close to the outgoing model, and I hope that that means it's actually going to be closer to the Maverick than it was when this model initially launched. When the Santa Cruz initially launched and then the Maverick launched shortly thereafter, I was really shocked how much more expensive the Santa Cruz was. But the Maverick has grown in terms of its price tag lately, and that means that the Santa Cruz is actually a better deal in comparison than it was when the two models first launched a number of years ago. And I hope that continues for 2025, but we won't know more until this goes closer to on sale a little bit later in calendar year 2024. If you want to get your hands on one, these are going to be on sale this summer, so be sure and stay tuned because I will have more pricing information and, of course, driving impressions when this goes on sale a little bit later in 2024. Now, again, I really hope that the pricing is in line with the very popular Ford Maverick, but the one thing this doesn't have that the Ford Maverick does have is that hybrid system, which is part of why I think the Maverick has been so popular. And if I could change one thing about the Santa Cruz, it would be to just snag that Tucson hybrid and plug-in hybrid and just jam them right under the body. Let me know what you think about all that, and be sure and stay tuned for extra coverage from the New York Auto Show. See all of you later.